Hey, good afternoon, Dr. Mike. It's great to have you on the podcast. I appreciate you taking the time out of your day to come on, talk a little bit today with me, and go into details on a couple of things that you yourself are an expert on. Welcome to the Life Shift Mastery podcast. I'm really excited about our talks today and where we're going to go with this. But before we get started, if you don't mind, tell us a little bit about yourself, what you do, what you've done, and we'll kind of go from there.
Yeah, thank you very much, Peter. I really appreciate the time and the invite, and it is awesome to be here. So thank you very much. So just a quick background on myself. I joined the Air Force right out of high school. So it was just another summer off, right? Graduated as a senior, 3 months vacation, and then right into the military. And then I served for 26 years, had a lot of amazing jobs over the course of my career, a lot of great leadership positions once I made it to that point. Every assignment I had was great. And probably the best job I had in the Air Force was becoming a first sergeant. So I was kind of, responsible for all the enlisted troops and worked directly for the commander. And then eventually got hired as the first sergeant for the Air Force Thunderbirds. So we got to travel the world and do the air shows all over, meet all kinds of cool people. Once I was done with my 26 years, I transitioned into a Berkshire Hathaway energy company, where I had the honor and pleasure of working for Warren Buffett and Greg Abel for about 10 years. Along the way, got my PhD in industrial organizational psychology with a focus in leadership development and coaching. And one day hit the wall in corporate America where I didn't feel like I was contributing or making an impact the way I felt I was called to do. So I kind of stepped away from corporate America with the blessing of my wife after sleeping on the couch for 5 nights. No, she didn't make me do that. But she blessed it, and it took me a while to get started, but it's going amazing. I mean, I'm now doing executive leadership coaching. I do a lot of workshops, 1 and 2 day workshops all over, a lot back in the military, and keynote speaking. So I'm just so fortunate to get to do what I do every single day, and just really helping individuals, making a difference, meaningful change through intentional actions, right, is kind of what I'm all about. A lot like the amazing work that you all do.
Right. Wow. Once again, thank you so much for your service. That's a cool transition. And I'd say if you can go into the military, serve the time that you did for 26 years, and come out and have a lot of good things to say about it, I'm sure there was plenty of obstacles along the way, no doubt. But that's a pretty awesome career. And I guess I'll say before we get into some other questions, having traveled around the world as a first sergeant and all these other things, what was your favorite area you visited or traveled to, country related?
I would have to say probably Italy.
Italy?
Um, yeah, so I never got stationed there, but just a few months ago, Aviano Air Base, the folks there, they flew me over to do a workshop. And we had been on Italy before on vacation, different areas, but when I got to the base there and to Aviano, and just the nice little town it was, it's close to Venice. So that was a really nice place. But again, there's so many nice places, and as far as the bases I was stationed at, never was at a cold weather base. I mean, I was in nice warm climates my whole career, and then end up in Las Vegas.
Yeah, I'm originally from upstate New York, so I'm no stranger to the cold weather. But I lived out in California for a year and then in Florida for 4 years, so I got pretty used to the warmer weather as well.
Yeah. Yep. Being born and raised in Pittsburgh is where I was from. I grew up.
Yeah,
So yeah, same
yeah,
thing. And once I left,
yeah.
warm weather my whole rest of my life so far up to this point.
The thing I do love about the Northeast, though, especially, is just the changing seasons. I mean, you just can't beat
Yeah.
it.
Yeah.
But
Big time.
okay, so Italy. All right, that's awesome. You mentioned being a first sergeant, how you were in charge of it. You were responsible for, of course, the soldiers that were under you. Before then, in the military and in life, you always have someone who's above you, someone to
Mhm.
answer to. I kind of wanted to talk with your long career of leadership and all that entails. I kind of want to talk about some of the characteristics of a leader
Mhm.
and some things that you would say, hey, this if you're a leader, and everyone is in some capacity, right? If you're
Yes.
a leader, these are qualities that if you haven't mastered, you need to. And kind of go where you will with that. But if you're saying if someone's a leader, or specifically maybe from your experience as a leader, what are a couple key values, characteristics that a leader has to have?
So I would say, in all my coaching experience, I worked again with a lot of execs, military commanders, C-suite, and I would say by far, hands down, the number one quality and characteristic that will serve a leader more positively than anything else is being able to step into vulnerability and embrace that in the truest form of vulnerability, right? And what it really means. I can't tell you how many times I've done a workshop or just been with a small group of leaders and I ask the question, so if I say the word vulnerability to you, what does that mean? And kind of like simultaneously across the room, weak,
Right.
right? That's kind of what we've been programmed, generally speaking, as a society to think about vulnerability. But vulnerability, in terms of being a leader, really equates to courage, strength, mature, and a very wise decision. Vulnerability is really about being able to accept or reject feedback, but being open to it,
Mhm.
being able to take that time to look inside yourself, right? That reflective introspection,
Right.
being able to admit when you're wrong or when you need help or when you need to pivot or course correct. So all those things are kind of really vulnerability, right? Being open,
Sure.
being receptive, being aware. And when you can leverage that as a leader and everything that goes with it at the right time, for the right reason, the right place, it is such an amazing and powerful thing to do. So that's probably my very top thing that I've seen, globally.
Okay. No, that's such an interesting answer. I'm kind of a LinkedIn warrior these days, and I we work with people as well here, and you see a lot of people, and exactly like you said, vulnerability says weakness. One of the things that we preach really heavy is high productivity, high performance. And a
Mm-hmm.
lot of the people that we work with, as soon as they hear that word, they think it only refers to career advancement, multiple cars in the driveway, kind of that same misconception that high performance just means that you have all these things. When really it's no, every aspect of your life is balanced. You have a healthy
Yes.
mindset, you have a healthy relationship, and things are as it should be. And I
Yeah.
think if I'm right, correct me if I'm wrong, within that realm of vulnerability and being able to admit when you're wrong and ask for help comes emotional intelligence, effective communication, more of an active listener. Is that kind of the right track?
Yeah, yeah, 100%. So like it's funny that you mentioned, EQ, right? There's a lot of studies out there by very well-known research organizations, right, that show clearly that when it comes to success in whatever context that is for you, EQ is far more important than IQ.
Right.
So being
Yeah.
able to control your emotions,
Right.
ownership and personal responsibility, define objectives built on conviction, right? All those things, active listening versus passive hearing, the art of communication, being able to influence, impact, affect. All those things are more so a result of the EQ, right? Those soft skills
Mm.
that are so important as a leader, right? The art and science of leadership.
Right.
Right? And so those soft skills, everything that you just mentioned and we're talking about is the way that you can impact and leave a legacy more so than anything else.
Yeah, I like that, especially with leaving a legacy, and it's just kind of makes sense when you're working with a team, whether it's executives that you've worked with or military where there's thousands of people possibly under your command, or if you're just working in a small group of people or one on one. That emotional intelligence, that being able to that, I mean, active listening is huge.
Mm-hmm.
And it all goes to become a great leader. The great leaders, I tell clients, and I've told different friends that I've led a big misconception. I don't know if it's social media or Hollywood, but the best leaders are the strongest, the loudest in the room. They act like they have it all, but really, those people who can effectively communicate. I'm being real with you, and I can get across. I mean, jobs get better completed that way.
Mm-hmm.
Your business will scale faster if everyone's on the same page. So, okay,
Well,
vulnerability.
and that's so real quick, that's one thing that you just mentioned that's so key, right? When you come across as genuine and authentic, right? I mean, that just makes you so much more relatable and approachable, right? That people are willing to engage with you and come to you and really talk to you versus kind of putting on that front, right? Or wearing that emotional mask, pretending that you do have it all together, the authoritative approach versus an engaging approach and all those kinds of things. So you're 100% right.
Okay. Where do you think that comes from? Why do you think that there's this overwhelming amount of people who don't come across as genuine? They're kind of cold. Is it because people are so kind of consumed with themselves? What do you think leads to that? I'm just so curious.
So what I've seen from personal experience, people being full of themselves, like you said, that's probably the smaller amount that I've worked with. Like they are out there, but honestly, they're fewer and far between. What I've seen and experienced at a much higher rate is a lot of leaders just honestly don't know. So either they've never had, a mentor or a leadership coach that has kind of walked them down that road and shown them the power of these soft skills and their vulnerability and being relatable and genuine and authentic. So no one's really ever taken the time to do that. Or the way that they've come up through the ranks and the leaders they have had, that's what they've been exposed to. So a lot of times it's just honestly that they don't know. So they feel that the approach of, my way or the highway, I'm in charge, like do as I say, not as I do, those kind of things, all the cliche sayings that you hear, that just really comes from exposure to a particular kind of environment. And I will also say that, especially nowadays, I've never seen leaders as willing to step into coaching and actually do the work to improve that I have before. Like, I think a lot of it has to do with this. We're pretty far post pandemic now,
Right.
and the dust is starting to settle. And it's very apparent that the business landscape has 100% changed, right? In a lot of different ways. You just look at the economy, you look at remote work, you look at the generations that's coming in, you just look at coming back to work, you look at the great resignation, like all these things that have happened. Now the dust is starting to settle a little bit. So now more than ever, like I haven't had a lead. I can't even remember the last time I've had a leader I've coached say, Doc, you know what, man, this touchy feely stuff, it's not going to work for me. Like I just don't hear that.
Right.
It's more of the eyes are open, those aha moments, right? Light bulbs click and they're like, dude, I get it now. Right. And they start to connect and align with, you mentioned something, or maybe it was Nick before we started, but one of the exercises that I do with every single client or group, even in a workshop, 25, 30 people, is have them do a core purpose statement exercise. And it's some really, really deep introspective questions. And that's one of the first things I do with leaders too on one-on-one coaching is a couple inner core assessments and then boom, right into the core purpose.
Right.
Because when you kind of really start to unpack that and get clear on who you must become, what does your legacy have to look like? I'll tell you, man, things just really, you just feel totally different emotionally, physically, psychologically. And again, that alignment starts to come in very clear and you have more energy, you have more drive, you have a bigger reason, a bigger why, a bigger purpose. So, yeah.
No, that's you're you're singing all the right notes. There's so much to unpack there. I love everything you're saying. It's what I'm passionate about as well. I just get excited about it. There's a saying, and this kind of goes back. I forget who said it, but there's a saying that most men live quiet lives of desperation. I don't know how true that is, but I think within the corporate world, business coaches, like you said, the dust is sort of settling. It used to be, bear all this weight on your shoulders. Don't tell anybody about it because it is weak. And that's just the generation before me, at least. And that was kind of the mindset. But now people are realizing, like, if you do get a coach, like we were talking to other business coaches and stuff like that, and other people, everybody needs a coach. Everybody can benefit from a coach. You don't have to be in this really terrible state of mind. You don't have to be going through a crisis in your life to use coaching. Finding that clarity, like you were saying, you work with your clients. It's one of the things we do as well. Like, if you don't know why you're doing something, of course it makes it harder. We had a
Yeah.
client he says, just going through the motions and he didn't know what his why was. When you're able to find that and find out what really matters to you, whether that's your health, we do a lot of health and fitness as well, weight loss or strength training. when you're able to get some clarity of what you want to do, it's so much easier to
Mhm.
build a system and build systems of discipline and habits and positive things that are going to help you lead to that.
Yeah. Yep. And that's exactly part of another thing to piggyback on that. The way I do the one-on-one coaching is, we do all the inner core work, right? Then we do outer core work. So there's a 360 assessment survey. So, the client does their inner core work, outer core work. Then we put that all together, right, from both perspectives, subjective, objective, and then create a customized individual leadership action plan for the individual that's unique to them based on all of the data, all the unpacking, everything that we've seen, what resonates with them, what we've been able to validate. And so they're connected to it emotionally and they see the value in that plan. And then they're willing to just go over, through, around, under any obstacle that comes up.
Right. I mean, our bodies are built. We love routine, we love systems, and if you can get those that positively reach you towards your goals, it's all the better for it. Okay,
Yeah.
a little scenario for you. This is a question. I know you'll have a good answer for it. We've talked about kind of what makes a good leader
Mhm.
and some of the core things that you have to have, why that's needed. Let's say someone's in a leadership role now and they're realizing, hey, Dr. Mike, Peter, I don't have these skills, right? I am in a leadership position already. I got here. I need to work on gaining these skills. Okay, I need to be more vulnerable. I need to have more clarity. What's a first step, or what are a few first steps someone can take to become that? They want to learn now. What's a few steps they can take?
So one of the first steps to take that I think help more than anything else, obviously the help of a coach, right? But aside from that, if that's not available to you, or even with the coach, those inner core assessments, right? The initial first step to really tell you internally how you're wired, right? What your stronger characteristics are, what strengths you have that fire more than any else that you can leverage and polish, as well as identifying gaps or potential developmental needs, right? So that's really, I mean, that's the first thing is like clearing all the clutter and actually getting down to, again, objective reality,
Okay.
right? Let's do the assessments to see what we're working with versus being in that headspace or that mindset is, well, I guess this is where I am. I guess this is what I'm supposed to do. Don't like it, don't get it, but I just got to press,
Mm-hmm.
right? That's a pretty uncomfortable place to be in. And it could be very misguided and misaligned and unfounded. So again, just having that clear look at the data to show really what's going on inside, how you show up,
Mm-hmm.
right? Without the mask, that
Right.
emotional labor. That's the first starting point is to just get a hold of that
Yeah.
and get clarity to that. So that's your starting point.
Okay. And I think that's a very, very simple and easy starting point. It's like, hey, you got to figure out where you're at and do those
Yep.
steps. Okay.
So, and that's one of the values of the coach, of having a coach, right? Like what you guys do, what I do is the ICF International Coaching Federation has put out several white papers and research studies lately that talk about the ROI of coaching.
Mm-hmm.
So one of the coaching is an art and a science, right?
Right.
So those assessments that we're talking about as the starting point is the science piece of coaching. That gives us objective data
Mm-hmm.
from assessments
Mm-hmm.
that are valid and reliable, scientific constructs. They're developed, they're proven, they're tried.
Why it works.
Right. But the art of the coaching is having someone that can unpack that for you,
Right.
do an effective debrief in such a way that they kind of walk you down the road as the client
Yeah.
and partner with you where you start to see it, you understand it, it makes sense, and you get it. Right. So that's because a lot of times we could take some of those on our own and just read it and, you know, maybe not have the right insight or the right understanding to the tool to effectively unpack it. So again, having a coach or someone by your side who's skilled in that art of asking the right questions, of putting two and two together is so beneficial.
No, 100%. That's so true. I mean, you can look up whatever you want online. And honestly, there's so many resources through AI and YouTube where you can find all the information. you can find these tests that we're talking about without
Mm-hmm.
us, but implementing it, and what I, kind of how you would agree on this, what we do here at Life Shift, one of the biggest aspects is accountability. And of course, there's accountability coaches, performance coaching. Those kind of can all go hand in hand or separate. But I can't stress it enough how important accountability is in your life.
Yep.
Again, if that's, maybe that's your spouse, but a lot of times it's good if you can have someone who's kind of outside of things as well, and someone who's pushing you in the right direction, someone that you're not answering to like a boss. It's just someone who wants to see you go down the right direction. A lot of times that's what coaching is too. It's someone who cares about you, someone who says, hey, like, I'm here, I'm next to you, you're accountable. And you were just kind of mentioning that of if you have someone alongside of you, accountability is huge. I don't know if you have any thoughts on how important. I know in your book, Erasing the Line in the Sand, which I'll have in the link in the description as well. You talk about having that social acceptance when veterans get out of the workforce or get out of the military. And I know you were talking about how when you transfer in the military, especially in the Air Force, and you go to another base, there's usually another military family, right, who shows you where everything is on base and that kind of thing, and how important basically having that accountability or that friend, someone to
Mm-hmm.
look out for you, you feel so much more accepted. And I think so many men and women, they're going through life and there might be a lot of people around them, but they don't have people who actually care about them maybe or people helping them out and they feel so isolated. And a coach is good for that, just the accountability of like, hey man, you're not alone. Would you agree on that?
Yeah, 100%. Yeah, because a coach is someone who will speak, truth and value into your life. One of the things that I do, and I'm sure you guys are the same, right? I've never had a client that I tell them what to do, right? I don't. That's more of a consultant role. I don't do that. Like, we're not going to come up with some data and then I'm going to give them a plan and say, okay, what you need to do to get better is follow A, B, C, and D.
Right.
But what I do is I nudge, I prod, I ask, and I validate, right? So they are the ones that come up with their plan based on everything we've talked about it. But I'm that check and balance
Right.
to make sure that what they've come up with, number one, it's not like taking an easy way out, right? There is going to be some value from it and some growth. And then number two, to actually build that path for accountability in something that's going to make a difference,
Yeah.
efficiency, effectiveness, and impact. Right. So yeah, you're 100% right. And that's what the accountability is. That's built in to the back end of the coaching process. Like, the front end is all the data, right? The assessments, like putting this plan together, like we're working and grinding. After that, though, it becomes a normal cadence with the coach, where at that point, truly all I am is a sounding board and an accountability partner.
Yeah. They're
Right.
kind of helping you adapt and you're figuring it out and you're learning.
Yeah.
We do that too. Like once you find that clarity, that energy, that impact, then sustainability is key. It's not a
Yes.
quick fix of like, hey, watch this video and change your life. It's like, how can we make this a lifestyle? Same with your diet. I'm not the biggest fan of diets, doing a program because once you stop, it's like you can fall. It's just like I try to make what I eat a lifestyle.
Mm-hmm.
It's something that's sustainable. I don't want to eat nothing forever in this starvation diet, but I also, it's all about balance and
Right.
making sure things are where they should be. So I love that, Doctor. Great insights. I'm personally learning a lot. I know our viewers are seeing the importance of everything we're both saying. Kind of transitioning
Mm-hmm.
into high performance, into being an expert at what you do, whatever that is, whether that's coaching, whether that's working in the military, no matter where it is. Obviously, you're a high performer. Nobody's perfect, right? But obviously, you're a high performer. And there's certain routines that you have done in your life to set you up for that. And I was just wanting to kind of pick your brain. Do you have maybe it's a morning routine or just kind of these systems? How do you stay productive and high performance even on the days when you don't feel like it, even on the days when you're tired?
Really, really good question. So one of the morning routines that we've started probably, I don't know, I'd say maybe a year ago. So it was me and my wife. We get up every morning at 5:30 and we go to the gym together. Right. So Monday, Wednesday, and Friday is a 5 mile walk on the indoor track. Tuesday and Thursday is weight day. So we do that like consistently. Even when we travel, of course, we aren't as active as, but we still hit the little fitness room in the hotel or whatever. Right. So that's the one thing. Like when you get up and you hit the ground running, that kind of sets the tone for the rest of your day. And again, it's different for everyone, right? We just kind of had to find what worked for us, and that time and doing it together is what works for us. So that's the one thing. The second thing is my wife is really good about, to your point, making sure that we eat healthy.
Mm,
Right? So she's all over, the menu planning and the meal prep and cooking and all that stuff. And then I would say the third routine, and you mentioned this earlier, I think, before we started recording and went live, is just that relentless pursuit of self improvement that includes, education, reading books, going to school, getting a certificate, becoming an expert in your field, right? Laser focused on what you do so you can become, an authority figure in your field, right? So that way you can contribute value at a much higher level
mm,
for the people that you serve.
mm. I like that. Of course, like a morning routine, and I like how you said that too. Your morning routine doesn't have to be a 5:30 a.m. working and doing fitness with your wife. The main focus is you got to have a morning routine. What works for you? If you have a family and you got to take the kids to school and they're at this house and that house, obviously that might not work for you. If you
Mm-hmm.
work third or fourth shift, obviously you're working during that time. It's really
Yep.
about creating. You're familiar with, I'm sure, habit triggers and the
Mm-hmm.
negative habit triggers. It's about creating these systems of discipline. And I think people, not to get too sidetracked, but I think people get so confused by the word discipline. They think it only has a negative, like I'm going to discipline someone, or it only has a negative, connotation to it. It's really their discipline is just pushing you in the right direction, right? It's for your own betterment, right? That's what I
Yeah.
used to hear all the time from, my parents and stuff. But also now that I'm an adult, that discipline is just moving me in the right direction. So if it's a morning routine or an evening routine, you're just doing something. And I tell clients, when you have a routine, it doesn't mean I can't ever have fun and go on my phone and watch TV.
Right.
That can be part of your routine. It's
Mm-hmm.
just having that routine. So I love that. I love that perspective. And then self improvement and constantly learning, that relentless pursuit of education. And that doesn't always have to be an online course.
Right.
I mean, I'm a big reader. I know some people don't read, but just finding out what you want to do and then becoming an expert at it. And I love what you said at the end there. You bring so much more of a higher authority and value. You as a person become so much more valuable, and you can go a lot of places with that. Whether it's your career, your relationships, your networking, just becoming more of a valuable person through education. I love that. That was key.
Yeah, and if I could, something that you said just made me remember. You said about the word discipline as an example, right? And sometimes the negative connotation that we assign to it, just because society, generally speaking. But I don't know if you've ever heard of Bob Proctor.
I haven't.
He was the star in the movie The Secret, Law of Attraction. He's one of the most well known personal professional development guys. He passed away a couple of years ago, but at that point he'd been doing it for like 60 years, like very well known. But one of the things, he talked a lot about the universal laws, right? Which really the only two sources of reference we have are science and theology, right? And they kind of can bounce off and feed each other, right? But the
Yeah.
law of polarity, right, is what he talked about. So everything has an equal opposite, right? Up, down, in, out, hot, cold, north, south, heaven, hell, salt, pepper, left, right. You can keep going on and on and on, hot, cold, right?
Right.
So what you said about discipline, I think that's so true about the negative connotation. That word also has a positive by default. Just like the word, when I say manipulation, what does that mean to you?
Usually, I'm getting taken advantage of.
Right?
Right.
But do you know, like in the physical world, there's manipulative therapists, right? That actually manipulate your joints and your muscles to strengthen them.
Right.
There's also a way that there's such a thing as positive manipulation too, right? Where you're not necessarily using someone to take advantage of them, but you're manipulating a scenario or a situation for a beneficial outcome, right? So again, I just found that interesting that you said that about there's a negative connotation to discipline, but what it also means is, like you said, dedication, commitment.
I mean, I think it all ties into balance as well. Those are,
Yep.
you just have extremes, and so many people in our world today, it's the extreme. It's okay, I again, just kind of quickly touching on this, I'll tell people all the time, I've said in other podcasts, they're like, I want to lose weight, right? Or I want to train for this, or I'm going to fix my diet. And they go completely cold turkey and destroy their calories and they're eating almost nothing, or they start working out, they want to start running. And instead of running a mile or training for that, they instantly try to go out on 5 miles. They hurt themselves. They completely are disappointed with the results.
Yeah.
Everything is an extreme. Everything is how fast can I do it these days? When really it's just about taking your time. It's just incremental steps in the right direction, right?
Yes.
And it's the consistency. It's the consistency of, hey, over time, this will happen. Just the right steps every day. Same thing with finding your purpose. I'm sure you say it, and when you're doing these tests, sometimes it's impossible to know exactly what your purpose is, right away. If you said,
Yeah.
"What's your 5-year plan right now?" I'd say, "Here's kind of where I'm at," but that'll probably change. I tell
Yep.
people, we tell people, do the next right thing every day. Do what you
Yeah.
know you're supposed to do, and it'll work out. So,
Yeah.
really,
Even with the core purpose statement, sometimes it takes people 6 weeks, 8 weeks, 6 months, a year, right? The key is to like actually do it, dive into it, and it's a living document, right? Some people within a month, 3 weeks, they have a high level overarching boom. This is it, right?
right,
But you're right. It could take forever. And it's not a race. Like it's a marathon, right? Not a sprint.
right. I love that. So we've talked about kind of high performance habits, what it means to be a leader. I know you have a program, your Transform program. Did you want to mention anything about that, or did we kind of tie that into some of these core assessments and things like that?
Yeah. So really it's the leadership coaching, the 4D. So it's I have to look over here. My discover, dedicate, develop, and demonstrate. Right. So basically what that is, it's a holistic approach to coaching the individual, right? So again, we talked about the discover, right? That's where we uncover those things and we do the assessments and validate those. Then the dedicate, right? That's where we kind of actually commit to a plan, right? We
Right,
dedicate time and effort to pursuing that. The develop is where we actually create, now you're talking about the accountability piece. You develop goals and timelines and strategies to effectively accomplish that. And then it's time to demonstrate, right? That's showing by action. So that's where the rubber meets the road, right?
right,
And the client has to start doing the things that they said they were going to do to get the goal that they said they wanted,
right.
right? So it's kind of like it's phased, but it all feeds into each other and is built on building blocks. Yep. Along
Yeah.
the way.
I knew we had kind of talked about that, but that's exactly what I wanted you to share is the 4Ds, kind of that process, and help us understand that. One of the things that we always do in the podcast, I always do it. I've said already a couple times how much I love to read, but we always have our guests give a book recommendation. I know you have your book, You're Racing the Line in the Sand. Um,
Mhm.
if you don't have one off the top of your head, that's totally okay. But what's a book that you could recommend? It could be your life's book or one that's really impacted you. What would be your book recommendation, Doctor?
So the first book that pops up to my mind is The One Thing by Gary Keller and Jay Papasan. Gary Keller of Keller Williams, that Gary Keller. So I don't know if you've ever read or seen The One Thing,
I haven't read it.
but that's exactly what it is. Like, what's that one thing that you can do today that makes everything else unnecessary, that it's going to move the needle forward? And there's your focus. And it talks about things like time blocking and your why and how to structure your day, your week. So the one thing is really, really an amazing book. And then also the 12-week year.
Okay, I've
Yeah, the
heard of that.
12-week
It's on my read list right now.
year. Yep. Okay. Yeah. So that's a really good one too, as far as, I think that's another thing that's kind of interesting, right? When we talk about, planning, a year can go fast, but when you're talking about planning a year out, that seems so far away
Right,
that that's kind of where we leave it in terms of execution and action. Right? Well, I still got a year. I still got 11 months. I
right,
still got 10. And then all of a sudden, dude, you're like a week away from the year and you're not much farther than you were. But the 12-week year breaks things down into quarterly planning as if you were planning for the year. So from a time perspective, and task management,
okay,
amazing strategy. So those two, the one thing and the 12-week year.
okay, yeah. I I'll put the one thing on my read list, but the 12-week year that's soon. And if you recommend it, I'll bump that up. So okay, thanks for those recommendations. Thank
Absolutely.
you. Thanks for sharing your insights. I know what we've talked about has been super beneficial, just in regards to leadership, overall healthy lifestyle, and just taking yourself as a person to the next level. So, thank you for sharing your insights and everything like that, Dr. Mike. I appreciate you coming on.
Yeah, and thank you for what you do as well. I really do appreciate it, and keep up the amazing work.